Hello, and welcome back to English for Your Day, the podcast that helps you conquer the English language and make it a part of your everyday life. I'm your host, Lily, and today we have a very special guest returning to the show, the amazing Miss Sofia.
It's wonderful to be back, Lily. Always a pleasure to chat with you and your listeners.
We're so glad to have you, Miss Sofia. Today's topic is something I know a lot of our listeners struggle with: confidence when speaking English. Many people study hard, know the grammar, but freeze up when it's time to actually speak. Do you see this a lot with your students?
Absolutely, Lily. It's incredibly common. Even students with a strong grasp of the language can feel intimidated or self-conscious when it comes to speaking. But the good news is that confidence can be built.
That is good news. So, Miss Sofia, what are some practical tips our listeners can use to start speaking English with more confidence?
I'm happy to share some strategies that I've found really helpful for my students over the years. The first tip is to embrace imperfection. This is absolutely crucial, Lily. The fear of making mistakes is often the biggest obstacle to confidence. But here's the thing. Everyone makes mistakes, even native English speakers.
That's so true. I'm always messing up idioms or saying things a little awkwardly.
Exactly. It's a natural part of learning any language. Instead of fearing mistakes, try to see them as opportunities to learn and grow. The more you speak, the more you'll naturally start to self-correct over time.
So, it's more about getting the words out there than getting them perfect every time?
Precisely. Focus on communication. Your primary goal is to get your message across, to connect with another person, to share your ideas. Don't let the pursuit of perfection hold you back.
I think that's really freeing advice for our listeners. It takes the pressure off.
It really does. And something that ties into this is to avoid overthinking. Often, hesitation comes from overanalyzing grammar in your head. Sometimes you just need to trust your instincts and go with the flow.
Just speak. That should be our motto. So, Miss Sofia, building on this idea of embracing imperfection and just getting the words out, how important is practice when it comes to confidence?
Practice is absolutely essential, Lily. The second tip I always emphasize is to practice, practice, practice. It might seem obvious, but it's truly the foundation of confident speaking. The more you practice, the more comfortable and natural you'll become.
Makes sense. But how can people find opportunities to practice, especially if they don't live in an English-speaking country?
There are so many ways these days. Find speaking partners. This could be fellow language learners, native English speakers if you have access to them, or even yourself.
Talking to yourself?
Absolutely. It might feel silly at first, but it's a great way to get comfortable with forming sentences and expressing yourself in English. Describe your day. Tell yourself a story. Practice a presentation. Anything goes.
I love that idea. What about other practice methods?
The internet is a fantastic resource. There are language exchange apps and websites where you can connect with people from all over the world. You can also join online communities and forums focused on English conversation. And of course, there are online platforms where you can find conversation partners and tutors.
So many options. Any other practice tips?
One more that I find very helpful is to record yourself speaking. This allows you to listen back and identify areas for improvement in your pronunciation, fluency, and grammar. It can be a bit cringeworthy at first, but it's incredibly effective.
Great advice. Now, speaking of improving pronunciation, that seems like another important piece of the confidence puzzle.
You're absolutely right, Lily. Improving your pronunciation is key to being understood and feeling confident when you speak. So, my third tip is all about pronunciation. Start by paying attention to the sounds that are different in English compared to your native language. Practice these sounds specifically, maybe with the help of a pronunciation chart or a tutor.
Are there any other resources that can help?
Definitely. Online dictionaries and pronunciation guides often have audio examples of words and phrases, so you can hear how they're supposed to sound.
That's handy.
And another great technique is to mimic native speakers. Listen to how they speak, their rhythm, intonation, and stress patterns, and try to imitate them. Movies, TV shows, and podcasts are excellent for this.
I'm always telling our listeners to immerse themselves in English. So, Miss Sofia, it seems like we've touched on pronunciation a bit already, but could you expand on why active listening is so important for confident speaking?
Active listening is a crucial skill, Lily, and one that often gets overlooked. It's not just about hearing the words, but truly engaging with the language. That's why my fourth tip is to become an active listener.
How does listening help with speaking?
In many ways. First of all, it helps you tune your ear to the sounds and rhythms of English. The more you listen, the more familiar you'll become with the language, and the easier it will be to produce those sounds yourself.
So, it's about training your ears?
Exactly. And when you listen actively, you pay attention to how native speakers use the language, their pronunciation, intonation, word choices, and even their body language.
It's like absorbing the language through osmosis.
Precisely. And finally, active listening helps you focus on understanding the overall meaning of what's being said, rather than getting bogged down in every single word. This is a crucial skill for confident communication.
That makes a lot of sense. So, what are some good ways to practice active listening?
Immerse yourself in English as much as possible. Watch movies and TV shows with subtitles, listen to music and podcasts, and even read aloud. And when you're interacting with native speakers, really focus on what they're saying and how they're saying it.
Great advice. Now, Miss Sofia, we've talked about pronunciation and listening, but what about fluency? How can our listeners develop that smooth, natural flow that makes people sound so confident?
Fluency is all about being able to express yourself effortlessly, Lily, without too much hesitation or stumbling. And it's definitely a skill that can be developed with practice. My fifth tip is to focus on improving your fluency.
It's that effortless flow that makes people sound so confident, right?
Exactly. And one of the best ways to develop fluency is to think in English. Try to form your thoughts directly in English, rather than translating from your native language.
That sounds challenging.
Can be at first, but it gets easier with practice. Start with simple sentences and gradually work your way up to more complex thoughts.
Any other tips for smoother speaking?
Yes. Don't be afraid to use fillers and linking words like, well, however, so, and because. These words and phrases can actually help you sound more natural and give you time to think while you're speaking.
So, it's okay to say, and like?
In moderation, absolutely. They're a natural part of spoken English. Just be mindful of not overusing them.
Good to know. Anything else?
Yes, practice speaking at a natural pace. Don't rush your words, but also avoid long pauses. Find a comfortable rhythm that allows you to express yourself clearly and confidently.
Great advice. Now, Miss Sofia, we've covered a lot of ground today. Embracing imperfection, the importance of practice, pronunciation, active listening, and fluency. But it all seems to come back to that core idea of confidence. Any final words of wisdom on how our listeners can truly believe in themselves and their ability to speak English?
Absolutely, Lily. Confidence is key, and it's something you can actively cultivate. So, for my sixth and final tip, I want to talk about how to actually boost that self-belief. One effective strategy is to set realistic goals. Don't try to become fluent overnight. Instead, start with small, achievable targets and gradually increase the difficulty as you progress. And remember to track your progress so you can see how far you've come.
So, baby steps?
Exactly. And be sure to celebrate your progress along the way. Acknowledge your accomplishments, no matter how small, and use them to stay motivated. In addition to that, another powerful technique is to visualize success. Imagine yourself speaking English confidently and fluently in different situations. This can help you build belief in your abilities.
I love that idea. It's like mental rehearsal.
Precisely. And finally, don't underestimate the power of fake it till you make it. Even if you don't feel confident, act as if you are. Stand tall, make eye contact, and speak with conviction. This can actually help you become more confident over time.
So, project confidence and the feeling will follow?
Exactly. Remember, confidence comes from consistent effort and practice. Be patient with yourself, enjoy the journey, and celebrate your successes along the way.
Those are fantastic tips, Ms. Sofia. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. I know our listeners will find this incredibly helpful.
My pleasure, Lily. I always enjoy being on the show.
So, let's do a quick recap of the 7 tips for speaking English more confidently. First, embrace imperfection and don't be afraid of making mistakes. Second, practice regularly whenever and wherever you can. Third, pay attention to your pronunciation and practice those tricky sounds. Fourth, become an active listener to familiarize yourself with the language. Fifth, focus on improving your fluency by thinking in English and using linking words. Sixth, set realistic goals, track your progress, and celebrate small wins. And last but not least, believe in yourself and act as if you're already confident. And to our listeners, remember that building confidence takes time and effort, but it's absolutely achievable. Start implementing these tips today, and you'll be amazed at how much progress you can make. That's all for today's episode of English for Your Day. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.